Before Washington, D.C. stood as the symbol of American power before the marble domes, the monuments, and the gridlock politics, there was another city. A city of cobblestone streets and whispered revolutions. A city where quills signed the fate of an empire and bells rang out the birth of a nation. That city was Philadelphia. It wasn't just the first capital of the United States by accident. It earned its place at the heart of a revolution through intellect, industry, strategy, and rebellion. Its buildings housed revolutions, its people birthed democracy, and its halls echoed with the voices that changed history. This isn't just the story of a city, it's the story of where America began. To understand why Philadelphia was chosen as the first capital, we must travel back far beyond the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Long before the 4th of July, 1776, before the Revolutionary War consumed the colonies, before the phrase United States even held meaning, Philadelphia was rising. In 1682, a man named William Penn founded the city on the banks of the Delaware River. A Quaker, Penn had a vision not of conquest or dominance, but of peace and planning. He called his new city Philadelphia, the Greek word for brotherly love. But this wasn't just poetic, it was foundational. Penn wanted a city that would represent tolerance, cooperation, and resume a stark contrast to the violent struggles of Europe. His urban vision was revolutionary for its time. Wide streets in a grid pattern, parks for common use, clean water access, and religious freedom at its heart. Philadelphia was built not just to survive, but to thrive, and it did. By the early 1700s, it had grown into the largest and most sophisticated city in the American colonies. It attracted merchants, artisans, thinkers, and revolutionaries. It attracted the kind of people who didn't just accept the world as it was, they envisioned what it could be. Among them was Benjamin Franklin, the polymath who practically defined what it meant to be an American before America even existed. Franklin created institutions that shaped not just Philadelphia, but the nation. The first public library, the first fire department, a philosophical society, and a university. He printed newspapers, experimented with electricity, wrote books, and encouraged civic engagement. He was a scientist, a diplomat, and a founder. But more than anything, Franklin helped transform Philadelphia into a hub of enlightenment. By the mid-18th century, Philadelphia was the cultural and intellectual capital of the colonies. It had more newspapers, more booksellers, more schools, and more political clubs than any other city. It was bustling, energetic, and ambitious, and it was ready to lead. When colonial tensions with Britain escalated in the 1760s and early 1770s, Philadelphia quickly became the meeting point for revolution. In 1774, Carpenter's Hall hosted the First Continental Congress. Delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies met to discuss their grievances against King George III. They weren't yet demanding independence, but they were laying the groundwork. That same year, Philadelphia sent its own list of grievances to the Crown, further solidifying its role as the voice of the colonies. The city became the living embodiment of colonial resistance and unity. It had the buildings, it had the brains, and most importantly, it had the will. When war broke out in 1775, the Second Continental Congress reconvened in Philadelphia. It was in the Pennsylvania State House, later renamed Independence Hall, that the decision to separate from Britain was made. Here, the Declaration of Independence was debated, drafted, and finally adopted on the 4th of July, 1776. Thomas Jefferson, seated in a modest room not far from Independence Hall, composed the draft. The document was edited, challenged, and finalized within those city walls. The votes were cast. The signatures were inked. and the nation was born. Philadelphia had become more than a city. It was a symbol, a beacon. The Liberty Bell rang out to announce the reading of the Declaration. Crowds gathered, some cheering, others fearful, but all aware that nothing would ever be the same again. Philadelphia wasn't just part of the Revolution. It was the Revolution's capital. Throughout the Revolutionary War, Philadelphia played a crucial role. It was both the seat of the Continental Congress and the nerve center for political planning and supply chains. Delegates slept in its inns, worked in its chambers, and debated in its coffeehouses. At night, lanterns glowed behind shuttered windows as men discussed the fate of an empire. But in 1777, British forces captured the city. General Howe led troops into Philadelphia, forcing the Continental Congress to flee. For 9 months, the city was under British occupation, and its streets once alive with resistance grew eerily quiet. When the British finally left in 1778, the Congress returned, but the experience had rattled the colonies. The war had shown the need for a permanent national capital, not so easily seized or divided. Still, in the short term, Philadelphia resumed its role as the capital. After the war ended in 1783, the newly independent states faced a new challenge: creating a unified government. The Articles of Confederation proved weak, so once again, the leaders turned to Philadelphia. In the summer of 1787, the Constitutional Convention met in Independence Hall. Delegates from every state except Rhode Island came to reshape the very foundation of American governance. Heated debates filled the hall. Large states battled small ones. Federalists clashed with anti-federalists. Slavery, representation, taxation, every issue was on the table. But eventually, through compromise and vision, the Constitution was born. It was signed in Philadelphia, just steps from where the Declaration had been approved 11 years earlier. By the 1790s, Philadelphia had not only helped found a nationite, had defined it. So when Congress needed a place to serve as the temporary capital, while Washington, D.C. was being built, the answer was obvious. From 1790 to 1800, Philadelphia officially served as the capital of the United States. The executive, legislative, and judicial branches all operated from within the city. George Washington lived there. John Adams took the oath of office there. Laws were written, treaties signed, and the machinery of a young republic began to function. It was during this time that many foundational institutions were created, from the U.S. Mint to the Navy Department. It was also in Philadelphia where the first peaceful transfer of power took place when Adams succeeded Washington, proving that democracy could work. But the honor of being capital wasn't permanent. The Residence Act of 1790 had decided that a new federal district later named Washington, D.C., would be created along the Potomac River. The capital would move there in 1800. Still, Philadelphia's influence didn't end. Even after the capital relocated, Philadelphia remained a beacon of liberty and innovation. It led the way in science, medicine, education, and civic reform. It became a hotbed for abolitionist activity. The Underground Railroad operated in its neighborhoods. It was where Frederick Douglass gave some of his most powerful speeches. It was where women's rights were debated and where immigrants arrived in search of freedom. Philadelphia's architecture still holds the echoes of revolution. Independence Hall, Congress Hall, Franklin Court, these aren't just buildings, they're time machines. They connect the present with the past in a way few places on earth can. And when we ask why Philadelphia was the first capital of the United States, we realize the answer isn't just political. It's emotional, it's cultural, it's symbolic. Philadelphia was the city of ideas, the city of courage, the city of compromise. It held the pen that wrote the dream, and the paper that held the nation's hope. It hosted the arguments, the fears, the visions, and ultimately, the unity. It was, and in many ways still is, the beating heart of the American experiment. Other cities may now hold the torch, but Philadelphia lit the fire. So the next time you walk through its streets, pause. Listen to the whispers in the bricks, feel the courage in the stones. And remember that in this city, a group of farmers, merchants, lawyers, and dreamers came together not just to declare independence, but to build something the world had never seen. A republic, if we can keep it. If this story inspired you, let your voice be heard. Drop a comment below, share this video with someone who loves history, and subscribe for more powerful stories from the past that still shape our present.